In typography, we're going to need to be able to manipulate text in Adobe products, and we'll use Photoshop to see how that can be done. So I'm in Home, I'm creating a new document. I'm going to go for a letter, 8.5 by 11, 300 ppi. That means I'm at a print quality document, 300 pixels per inch. If it was a screen-based document, I'd be at 72 for 300. RGB is for digital media. A screen-based media, CMYK is for print. Now I have my type tool here, and I can access it with a shortcut pressing T on my keyboard or clicking on it. Now if I click, I get a line. If I click and drag, I get a column. So let's start to play with these. Now this is my character and paragraph palette. I can turn that on and off with this icon right up here. Or I can go to the Windows option, drop down to character, and I'm good to go. So what we have here, let's select all this and play with it. So now here's my font, my typeface that I can select. I can decide if I'm going to go regular, bold, italic. Now if I have a font, that doesn't allow me those options, I can go down here, and Photoshop allows us to use this tool that's called Faux Bold. And what it does is it fakes bold for us. See down there, fakes bold. We can fake italic. We can drop into all caps. We can drop into small caps, and be cautious when you use small caps because you're going to see this happen. Now here, the line weight on this is a lot heavier than the line weight here, which makes it a little bit awkward. And you can see that really in this cue. You can really see that happen. I can do Subscript and Superscript, so that means that I'm going to shift the character up, shift the character down, underline, and strike through. Now, if we talk about the tracking, and what tracking is the expansion, and we'll do it right here. Let's do it here instead. Tracking is the spacing in between the word. And I can change that by using this option right here. I can condense my words, or I can open them up, all the characters across the board. Now what's going to happen is that you're going to find we also need to kern our text. And kerning is the spaces that happen individually in between each character. So if we look down here, let's look for where the spacing does not feel equal or proportionate to the rest of the spacing that's happening in the word. And when I'm looking, so here, if you look at this word right here, right? Ideally, we're trying to get equal spacing in between those characters, right? And if you kind of squint your eyes, you can see that the spacing is not really consistent here. It almost kind of opens up a little bit. And it's not really consistent here. Kind of opens up a little bit. So I can control that. And I can do that by using kerning right here. So my cursor has to be in between the two letters in order to control that. And I can go closer and move it in, or I can go farther apart and expand it. So our goal is to get consistent spacing in between the letters, and this means a lot when you're dealing with headings and subheadings. When you're dealing with body text or body copy at 12 point, it's not as obvious. When you get your text large, it becomes very obvious, which you want to make sure that you're watching out for. Now here we can start to play with the vertical, right? How tall the type is. And we can play with how wide the type is. And I would be cautious here because it can get very weird very quick. Right? So be cautious when you use this. I would say a little goes longer than a lot. A little goes a longer way than a lot. This is where I can start to shift the baseline. And so we know the baseline is is the invisible line, right, that all characters sit on top of. So if I come in here and I do this, I can shift my baseline away from the one that's already been established. Now if we come into our paragraph palette, we have different options. Pretty straightforward, something we're used to. We have our alignment right, our alignment left, our center alignment, our right alignment, then we have justification, and justification expands our text for this side to equal this side. And there's something a little different that happens when we use it, is that if we look here, and we're looking at the last line, this is all this changes, is that the last line is either aligned right, it's aligned center, or it's aligned right. I'm sorry, aligned left, aligned center, aligned right. Or we can make it expand all the way across. Now this is a legibility nightmare. And if this, all these spacing in between these words are called rivers. So you want to be very cautious when you're using justification that it makes sense to do so, and that you are handling the tracking and the kerning correctly. Now if we come back here, here's an option to have hyphenate. And hyphenate can sometimes cause a problem when we're dealing with paragraphs, because this is called the rag. And you can see as we're reading through this, right now I'd say the tracking is way too open. It's uncomfortable to read. The other thing is that if we look here and our word is broken, it's hard to follow that thought with the hyphen. It's hard to follow the broken word, the thought, with the hyphen. So you usually want to keep your hyphens off and only use them when you need the hyphenate. Keep that hyphenate off for the most part. Now it's so much more legible, right? Our words aren't broken apart at the rag.